"Could you not touch me? I just can't handle it physically." These were the words my wife said to me. I was just trying to remove some lint from her hair, but she vehemently rejected the gesture. To think that my beloved wife would say something like this to me. I wonder how things ended up like this. I'm John. Just an ordinary office worker. I met my wife, Sarah, during our college years. We got to know each other because we were both in the same club. Back then, she was the leader of the club, a very active and bright woman. I was the vice leader of the club. Being leaders together meant we spent a lot of time in each other's company. I was drawn to her, always reliable and smiling, and mustered up the courage to confess my feelings on Christmas of our senior year. I was worried because Sarah was beautiful and popular, but she said yes. "I like your kindness and thoughtfulness," she said, agreeing to date me. After graduating from college, we ended up at different companies but kept our relationship going. We would spend our weekend going on dates to amusement parks and aquariums. I also turned to Sarah for advice about work. I was struggling to fit in at my new job, but she would give me advice and encourage me. "Everyone goes through this at the start. Thanks, I'll give it my best shot." With Sarah's support, I managed to navigate the challenges of my new job. It's no exaggeration to say that I couldn't have made it without her. By our second year working, we were both thinking about marriage. I proposed to her at an observatory with a beautiful night view. "I will make you happy, Sarah. I'm looking forward to our life together." And so, we got married and began a happy life together. Sarah was considerate and an excellent cook. She would always pack a variety of delicious lunches for me, making sure to include my favorite dishes. I made sure to balance the nutrition. She'd say, handing me the carefully prepared lunch. I look forward to eating it every lunch break. On our anniversaries, we'd enjoy cakes Sarah baked. "Let's always stay together. I love you, Sarah. I'll do my best to keep us happy." We whispered such affectionate words to each other. Those were truly happy times. But then, an event occurred that completely changed Sarah. We started living with her mother, Grace. After losing her husband, Grace was living alone but had an accident that made it difficult for her to live by herself. So, we began our life together. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." Sarah apologized, but I didn't mind at all. We help each other out in times of need. Grace is family. No need for formalities, I reassured her. Living together turned out to be quite challenging. Grace was particular about everything and would often complain about my habits. "The windowsills are dirty. Clean them up," she'd nag. "Your taste in clothes is terrible. Where do you even find such outfits?" Day after day, I was subjected to such criticisms, and it gradually wore me down. I had hoped Sarah might defend me to some extent, but she never took my side. Instead, she joined in the criticism, saying things like, "Oh, that really is dirty. Clean it up right away, and you have no sense of fashion. Get rid of those tacky clothes immediately." My wife had never behaved like this before. I was utterly confused. "Sarah, why do you only say such harsh things? Consider my feelings too." I asked her when we were alone, but all I got back was a brash response. "What are you talking about? What's wrong with pointing out flaws? If you were more careful, you wouldn't be criticized like this." But still, enough, you're being annoying. Instead of complaining to me, why don't you work on improving yourself or help out with the chores? Sorry. Overwhelmed by Sarah's assertiveness, I ended up backing down. Reluctantly, I tried to be more considerate around Grace. I made an effort to clean more than before and took greater care with my appearance. I thought that by doing so, they might ease up on their criticisms a bit. However, my efforts were misplaced. Sarah and Grace's behavior only escalated, and by the time a year had passed since we started living together, their remarks had almost reached the level of verbal abuse. "Stay away from me. You smell and it's disgusting." "That's right. It would be terrible if Sarah ended up smelling like you. Go somewhere else." I was driven out of the house even on my days off. After wandering aimlessly around the neighborhood, I made a habit of sitting by the riverbank, sipping canned coffee alone. Looking at the park near the riverbank, I saw couples enjoying each other's company, reminiscent of the peaceful times Sarah and I once shared. It felt just like when we ourselves were in such harmonious times. How can we return to those happy days? Sarah had truly changed. Gradually, she stopped making lunches for me, and I found myself eating sandwiches and bread from convenience store during lunch breaks. When colleagues asked, "What happened to the lovely lunches your wife used to make?" I felt awkward and didn't know how to respond. I wanted to reclaim our happiness, but I couldn't fathom why Grace and Sarah were so harsh towards me. I had resigned myself to the idea that Grace was just that kind of person, but I wished Sarah would return to her old self. I understand Sarah taking the side of her mother, Grace. But still, this is beyond any reasonable limit. Initially, I wondered why Sarah had changed, but eventually, I even started to think that maybe this was the real her. The thought that the sweet Sarah I knew might be gone saddened me. Regardless, I was stuck in a rut, unable to find a solution. In stark contrast to me, Grace and Sarah seemed to get along well. They even started using social media to share moments from their enjoyable life. From bits of their conversation I overheard, it seemed they had a decent followers. I was completely left out. This stress at home started affecting my mood at work too. I was subjected to a barrage of insults from morning till night, and upon returning home, I was greeted with yet another onslaught of verbal abuse. As the end of the workday approached, my heart grew heavier. One day, this state of mind led me to make a significant mistake. I missed an important meeting with a client. Michael had told me it was an important meeting, but for some reason, thoughts of my home life distracted me, and I zoned out. I forgot to jot down the date of the meeting in my diary, and it slipped my mind completely. On the day of the meeting, the client called when I failed to show up. I rushed to the meeting place to apologize, but the client was furious. "We will reconsider our dealings with your company," they said. Thanks to Michael's intervention, the situation was salvaged, but I was severely reprimanded. It was a crucial meeting that affected our company's sales. How could you forget something like that? I'm terribly sorry. I kept apologizing, but I was told that this incident would be reported to the higher-ups. I hope nothing comes of it. However, not long after, my wish was easily shattered. I was transferred to a regional branch office as part of a personal change. This branch was notorious as a place where problematic employees were sent. It seemed my salary would also decrease. Michael didn't say it explicitly, but it was clear this was a demotion. I thought to myself, as if things weren't bad enough at home, now this happens at work too. I hit rock bottom. Moreover, I had to tell this to those two. Just being there got me criticized for everything. Imagining their reaction to my demotion was disheartening. "I'm home," I announced upon returning, but no one replied. When I entered the living room, the two were chatting away happily. But as soon as they noticed me, their faces turned sour instantly. "What? Don't just stand there. Go away. You're in the way." Sarah began her assault. I don't want to say this. That's what I thought in my mind. My spirit was immediately dampened, but it was something that had to be said eventually. Gathering my courage, I informed them about my transfer. Sarah's reaction to my news was colder than I had anticipated. "Let's get a divorce," she said. "What? A divorce?" I was shaken by her sudden statement. But Sarah continued relentlessly. I hate the idea of living in the countryside. Plus, your salary is going to decrease, right? I married you because you had a good job at a prestigious company and earned well. There's no point in staying with you if your salary decreases. You were only good for making money, and now you can't even do that. Grace nodded in agreement. Cast me out. Money is important after all. There's no value in staying with a husband who earns less. I always thought you were useless. But to think you can't even do your job. A divorce is better for Sarah. I was deeply saddened by their words. Are they saying my only value was my salary? Thinking in my mind. I was too shocked to say anything and even felt like crying. At the same time, I realized that regaining the happy family life I once had was impossible. Lacking the energy to argue, I agreed to the divorce. All right, let's get a divorce. Thus, our divorce was settled without much ado. An end was put to the painful days that lasted 5 years. Although it was an unfortunate ending, I decided to take this as an opportunity to move on. I thought to myself that the family issues are resolved now. Time to do my best in a new place. Feeling liberated, I worked hard at the regional branch. I was initially worried since it was known as a place for demoted employees, but fortunately, the people in my department were genuinely nice. Especially Emily, a female colleague, was kind to me. If there's anything you don't understand, please ask, she'd say, always willing to answer my questions. She even shared her homemade lunch with me, saying she had made too much. During one of our lunch breaks, we discovered we lived in the same apartment complex. I was kind to Emily in return, but after what happened with my wife, I was cautious deep down. She seems nice, but you never know what people are really thinking. That's what I was thinking to myself. Emily offered to show me around, suggesting things like, "Shall I tell you about the cheap supermarket nearby?" But thinking it wasn't good to become too dependent, I gently declined her offers. Then one day, I was scheduled to visit a client with Emily. The business deal concluded successfully, and I was on my way back to the office, feeling relieved. When the light turned green, I began to cross the crosswalk. "Watch out!" Emily's shout caught me off guard, and just then, a car that ran a red light was heading straight for us. Frozen in shock, I couldn't move. I'm going to be hit. At that moment, Emily suddenly leaped towards me, pushing me out of the way. I narrowly avoided the car, but Emily was hit in my stead. She was sent flying and landed motionless on the ground. I immediately called for an ambulance, and Emily was rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, she regained consciousness quickly. She had to be hospitalized for a while due to bruises all over her body, but thankfully, her life was not in danger. When I visited her in the hospital, I thanked her for saving me. "Thank you for saving me, but I'm so sorry you ended up like this instead." "Oh no, don't worry about it. I did it on my own, so you don't need to apologize. They said there won't be any lasting effects, so it's all good." Emily replied with a smile. This incident made me gradually open up to her. She had risked her life to save me, so her kindness towards me must be genuine. During my visits, we started to share more personal stories. I told her about the terrible treatment from my ex-wife and mother-in-law, and how I ended up at the regional office due to a mistake at work. Upon hearing my story, Emily began to cry. "What's wrong?" I was taken aback, not expecting my story to make her cry. "Actually, I'm also divorced. My ex-husband used to abuse me physically, and it just brought back those memories." Really, I was surprised to hear this. I heard that Emily's husband was kind at the beginning of their marriage. However, after he was laid off, he began to drown his sorrows in alcohol and started physically abusing Emily. Although she managed to get a divorce, she still had scars from the abuse. Like me, the stress from her home life affected her work. leading to her transfer to the regional office. While I hadn't experienced physical violence, I understood the pain of a broken home. That must have been very hard for you. Yes, it was hard, especially when others couldn't understand, which made it even more painful. But meeting you has been a blessing. Meeting someone who shared a similar fate made me feel lighter. During her hospital stay, I visited her regularly, and we talked about various things. The day before her discharge, Emily confessed, "I like you, John. Would you go out with me?" By then, I had completely opened up to her. "Sure, I'd be happy to." I responded eagerly, and we became a couple. Dating Emily, we enjoyed meals at local restaurants and visited hidden gems, building happy memories together. I thought living alone was comfortable, but having someone by my side is truly happier. The joy in my life returned, and I felt more motivated. It had been almost 3 years since my divorce. One day, I received a call from a former colleague at my previous branch. We weren't in regular contact, so I was curious about the reason for the call. "It's been a while, what's up?" "Well, I saw a post on social media about someone searching for their ex-husband, and it's gone viral. I thought it might be about you." "Really? Why would that be?" The thought of my ex-wife crossed my mind. "If it's true, what's going on?" Following my former colleague's lead, I searched for the account in question. The account name was Sally. The viral post read, "Help, I'm looking for my ex-husband," and detailed characteristics of the ex-husband. Although it was an anonymous account, I was certain it was Sarah. The description matched me perfectly, and the way of speaking was just like Sarah's. Moreover, among the past posts, there were photos that I had been made to take. But why is she looking for me now? Wondering in my mind. The post mentioned, "I have something I must tell my ex-husband." I wonder if she's reflecting on her actions and wants to convey that. I created an anonymous account and replied to Sarah's post. "Hello, I apologize for the sudden intrusion. I believe I know someone who might be your ex-husband." Within minutes, my comment received a reply. "Is that true? Please tell me more about him. May I ask why you're looking for your ex-husband? As I wrote in the post, there's something I must tell him." "What exactly do you want to tell him?" At this point, Sarah's tone changed drastically. "That's none of your business. Just hurry up and tell me." As soon as things didn't go her way, she reverted to this attitude. It seemed her personality hadn't changed after all. The thought of her feeling remorse seemed far-fetched now. Then what does she want to tell me? I could have ended the conversation there, but I decided to continue, driven by curiosity. "Without more details, I cannot disclose any information. It's personal information, after all." There was a pause of about 10 minutes. Just as I thought she might not reply, a lengthy response came. "Fine, I'll tell you. I married him for the money, but divorced him when his salary decreased due to a transfer. Men are disposable. If one goes bad, you just replace him. I thought I could easily remarry because I'm beautiful, but no decent men appeared. It's tough supporting my mother alone. Looking back, he did earn a decent salary despite the decrease. So, I thought maybe remarrying him wouldn't be so bad, and that's why I'm looking." What kind of reason is that? Thinking in my mind. I was beyond angry. I was dumbfounded. I thought to myself, what does she think I am? I have no interest in being used so conveniently. Is that all? Then hurry up with the information. Despite her eagerness for information, I coldly rejected her. With such a trivial reason, I cannot give you the information. If you were serious about finding your husband, you wouldn't resort to social media but consult detectives or the police. I thought it'd help out of kindness, but it was a waste of time. Goodbye. After sending that message, I turned off my cell phone. I felt a sense of relief finally standing up to my ex-wife. Talking to myself that divorcing Sarah was the right decision. Being with such a terrible person would only bring more stress. This incident reminded me that people don't change easily. Getting involved any further would only drag me into unhappiness. Besides, I now have Emily, my new partner. She truly loves me from the bottom of her heart. Similarly, I have deep feelings for Emily as well. I've decided to forget about my ex-wife and cherish the love I have with Emily. That's the true happiness for me now.